I think we'll wait a little bit longer to make sure our audience members get into the chat room or to the webinar room. So we'll start here in maybe another 30 seconds or so. All right, I think we will go ahead and get started. So good evening and welcome to Ohio Wesleyan's own Bishop Plus virtual information session series. My name is Lori Patton and I am the Director of Admission here at Ohio Wesleyan, or we like to refer to ourselves as OWU. It's a little bit easier to say that than OWU or even Ohio Wesleyan. So you may hear myself and others refer to us in that way. I am also a graduate of Ohio Wesleyan, and I've been working in the admission office pretty much since graduation. Fun fact, I'm also the parent of now 2 Ohio Wesleyan students. My daughter just finished her sophomore year on campus, and my son, who actually graduates from high school this Saturday in a drive-through graduation ceremony, will be starting at Ohio Wesleyan in the fall. So I have also the benefit of having a parent perspective as well. I will be the moderator for tonight's session, which we are calling Get Psyched, Psychology at OWU. And I'm especially pleased to be able to be a part of this session because I myself am a product of OWU's psychology program. I graduated, as I mentioned, in 1995 with a double major in psychology as well as sociology, anthropology. So I am joined tonight by Dr. Vicki DiLillo. She is a professor of psychology and is currently serving as a department chair. I will invite her to introduce herself more fully in just a minute, but first I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements. We've gathered some questions to ask Dr. DiLillo ahead of time. Some of those you had suggested when you registered, but I'll remind you that you have the opportunity to, through the course of the webinar, to ask questions on the fly. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of, well, I guess it depends on how you have your screen set up, but for me, it's at the bottom. There's a Q&A feature. You are welcome to, at any point in time during this webinar, to submit questions, and we'll be sure to get to those during our time together. So Dr. DiLillo, I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, how long you've been at Ohio Wesleyan, what are some of the courses that you teach, maybe a bit about your specific research interests, and then anything else that you think would be helpful for our audience to know.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just wanted to say how happy I am to be here and to meet you all virtually. I wish it were in person, but hopefully we'll have a chance to see you on campus sometime soon. As Lori mentioned, my name is Vicki DiLillo. I have been at Ohio Wesleyan for the last 16 years. My specialty area is in clinical health psychology, which means that I'm the type of psychologist who is licensed and qualified to work with people who have psychological disorders. And the area I'm most interested in is working with folks who have chronic and terminal illness. So at Ohio Wesleyan, I teach a range of different courses. All of the psychology professors teach our intro psychology course from time to time, at least. And in addition to that, I teach health psychology. I teach a class in counseling and psychotherapy. I teach our behavior modification course, and I teach a course in public health. I was actually teaching that course in the spring, so with everything going on with COVID, we had a lot to discuss. In terms of my research, I am interested in modifiable factors for cardiovascular disease. So I am interested in things like blood pressure regulation. I'm interested in how to help people change their lifestyle habits to lose weight effectively, to increase physical activity, to stop smoking, anything that would enhance their risk for cardiovascular disease.
Great, thank you. And before we get into the questions, I wonder if we could spend just a couple of minutes talking about how the second half of the spring semester went. How was online teaching from your perspective? What did you learn about yourself and maybe even some of your students in the process?
Sure. It was an interesting experience. Obviously, no one expected for us to be going online as quickly as we did. The faculty had about a week to prepare for that, a week or so. And the thing that really struck me was how Ohio Wesleyan came together as a community to figure out what we needed to do to support our students, both academically and socially, as best we could. I had never taught an online class before. So I really benefited from some of my colleagues' expertise. I learned what some of the newest and most helpful technology would be to help me get online quickly. And I was able to reorganize things with my course in a way that, honestly, it went much more smoothly than I thought it would. The students were very engaged. One of the things that struck me is how much they really missed face-to-face classes. I thought maybe it was just me that missed the face-to-face classes so much. But I was really thrilled that they came to my virtual office hours. Sometimes they just came to say hi and see what was going on and make a little personal connection. The feedback that the students gave, I think not only me, but gave faculty more broadly, is that while they would certainly rather be face-to-face, the semester really went quite smoothly in the vast majority of cases. I was very, very pleasantly surprised.
That's great. It was fun for me as a parent to watch it from that perspective and see what my own daughter was experiencing with her professors as well. And she too indicated that it went quite smoothly from her end. So maybe to offer our audience a foundation about the psychology department, we'll sort of start from the beginning. So can you talk a little bit about the basics of the department? So things like how big is the department, how many faculty teach in the department, how many majors, roughly number of students are majoring and or minoring in the department, and then I guess more generally, what are the majors that are actually offered and what minors are offered?
Absolutely. So the psychology department is one of the largest departments on campus. We, depending on the year, we tend to have either the second or third largest percentage of the class majoring in our field. So we have lots of students who come through our classes. In addition to those students who choose to major or minor in psychology, we have a number of classes that hold some broad interest for students. So we have a lot of what we would call service courses, courses that help students fulfill their social science requirements and may be options for other majors. So for example, the health-related classes I teach are often options for students who are majoring in health and human kinetics. We also have students who frequently double major in psychology and some other field. So we do have lots and lots of students coming through the psych department, either as majors or just to pick up a class here or there. We currently have 7 full-time faculty members. And as I mentioned before, we all teach Introduction to Psychology, which I think is really sort of a neat thing we do here. In a lot of colleges, the Intro to Psych class is one that may be relegated to the newer people or maybe seen as sort of a class that might be less desirable to teach. But here, we all teach it. We all really, really enjoy it. And one of the things that's impressed me is that I think we've been really effective as a department in igniting interest in intro psych. If students can't find something that they are interested in the introductory psychology course, then we're doing something wrong. And I like the fact, I think it's a good thing that we all have our hands in that very first course of the major. So in addition to teaching intro psych, each of us has sort of a specialty area. I mentioned to you before that I am a clinical psychologist with interest in health, but we also have a cognitive psychologist, we have a personality psychologist, we have someone who specializes in learning, we have a counseling psychologist, and we have a neuroscientist. And so we all have specialty courses that we teach. The department is set up, the major is set up so that we have just one major. We don't have specific concentrations in our department, but we have intentionally set up our major to provide both breadth and depth in the field. So we have 3 required courses for our majors. We have Introduction to Psychology, and the other 2 required courses make up a research method sequence. Students need to take a statistics course, and they need to take our research methods course. And then above and beyond that, we have students take 1 course in each of 5 different content areas. So they need to take a course in the area of neuroscience. They need to take a course in the area of developmental psychology. They need to take a course that focuses on social aspects of psychology. They need to take a course related to psychological health. And they need to take a course related to thinking and adaptive behavior. And so students get both that nice quantitative research foundation and then also a nice sampling across the content area of the field. There's also room, of course, for students to take electives. So if they take a course in one area they really like, they can double dip. They can also use credits in their major to pursue an independent research experience or to do an internship they may be interested in. We also have lots of opportunities for students to pursue a particular area of interest one-on-one with a faculty member for something that we may not offer a specific course in. So for example, I had a student recently who had a real interest in working with older adults. And she spent a semester with me doing reading and learning about mental health concerns among geriatric populations. So there's certainly room in the major to really customize the major for a student's particular interest.
That's great. And you answered, I think, almost all of the questions I had in my next set. So you mentioned the required courses in the major, and I'm wondering how those required courses fit in. Like, do students take all 3 of those their freshman year? What does a typical first year maybe look like for a psychology major?
That's a great question. It's really pretty flexible. What we see is, well, I'll give you 2 scenarios. One would be a student who is coming in without having taken psychology courses for college credit previously. So this is someone coming in, no credits in college psychology. We would recommend that their first semester they take Psychology 110, that introduction to psychology, and really just sort of get that under their belt so that they can get a feel for what the field looks like and what some of those sub-disciplines, what might most interest them. Then second semester, we would recommend that they choose another course in the department that is a 200 level course, one that is a little more challenging perhaps than Psych 110, that they're interested in. We have a wide range of those 200 level courses we offer every semester, and we just say, pick one that sounds good to you. We typically don't have students start that research method sequence until their sophomore year. We really just have them concentrate on the content courses prior to that. One of the nice things about the major, I think, is the fact that relative to some other majors on campus, you can complete the major with relatively few courses. So the minimum number of courses that you need to take for a psych major is 9. That means you don't really need to front load yourself with psychology courses your first year. In fact, sometimes we have students who are super, super eager to do that, and we discourage them from doing that because they're often sad their senior year if they've taken their maximum number of psych classes. So that would be for a student who is coming in without psychology credits at all. If a student comes in, and we're seeing this more and more with credits for Psych 110 right off the bat, then they would work with their academic advisor to help them figure out what 200 level course would be most appropriate for them. Again, we would really listen to what the student is interested in and help guide them from there.
Great. And just for confirmation, the ways that a student could come in with credit already might be because they took a college level course in high school where they earned credit, or correct me if I'm wrong, a certain score on the AP psychology exam, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. Students who earn a 4 or a 5 on the AP psych exam will earn credit for Psych 110.
And then therefore would be able to move on to that 200 level course that you were describing before. Great. Another question that came in that might be something that you can address, wanting to know about specific classes or even internships available within speech pathology and how that might relate to psychology.
That is a good question. Let me start by saying we definitely have students who are interested in speech pathology. We have students who have gone on to get master's degrees in speech pathology. We don't have specific courses that are called something like speech pathology though. However, there are courses that are related to the field, I think, that would be worth exploring. So for example, one that comes to mind is our cognitive psychology class. That would be a very appropriate course for a student who's interested in speech pathology. I'm thinking back to a couple of students who have had that sort of interest, and they were psych majors, but also took some of our education classes. There were some education classes that were appropriate for the student as well. And if I'm remembering correctly, they also were able to take some linguistics classes.
Great, that's super helpful. You talked about the major, the requirements. Is there a capstone experience that's required in the major like some colleges have?
We don't have a required capstone at this stage of the game. It's something that we have really considered and something that ultimately we would like to work into the major. We're thinking hard about our curriculum right now and how to best distribute faculty workload. It's something we have in mind but don't have in place at the moment. However, a large percentage of our juniors and seniors do pursue an independent option as part of their major, as one of those psych credits. So some of the things we see seniors do, or juniors, is to pursue an independent research idea with a faculty member. We see students complete those one-on-one sort of independent study courses like I described to you before. One thing I haven't mentioned too much, though, are our internship opportunities for students. We've been doing something I think that's really cool over the last couple of years. We've actually started offering an internship class where a small number of students meet with a faculty member. His name is Dr. Chris Modica. He's a counseling psychologist. They meet with him twice a week during a normal class time to talk about issues in the field of professional psychology. So they do things like talk about their individual strengths and how those strengths might match up well with some sort of applied career. He talks to them about how to prepare a resume. He talks to them extensively about ethics in the workplace. And the main thing that students are doing during this semester is completing a roughly 10-hour-a-week internship in a community agency. So students are placed throughout Delaware City and Delaware County, individually in places like community mental health centers. We have an agency in town that works with adults who have a range of developmental disabilities. We've had students who have worked in human resources, just a wide range of community placements. And then they also come back then and talk in that group setting about some of the challenges they've had, about what their experiences are, and really focus on some of those professional and career development issues. And that's something, again, that I think is, it's nice to have a group of peers who are going through that process simultaneously. It gives them a really nice chance to reflect and to, I think, grow in terms of professional development more than they would if it were just one student and one faculty member.
That's great. Earlier you mentioned, Dr. DiLillo, about one of the faculty members in the department having a concentration or focus area in neuroscience. And I wonder if we could spend a minute talking about neuroscience. Is that a major at Ohio Wesleyan, and is it sort of housed within psychology, or is it how is it arranged at Ohio Wesleyan?
Yes, we do have a neuroscience program here. It's an interdisciplinary program. We do have a faculty member who is a neuroscientist housed in the psychology department. But we also have other neuroscience faculty members located in other departments across campus. Kira Bailey is a cognitive neuroscientist who is in the psychology department. And students who choose to major in neuroscience can elect to major in one of two neuroscience tracks. There is a cognitive behavioral neuroscience track, and then there's also a cellular and molecular neuroscience track. There are a number of courses that are common to both the psych major and the neuroscience major. So it's really, it's not unusual at all for us to see students who double major in psych and neuroscience.
That's great. Are there areas in psychology that exist that people often sort of overlook or don't think about? I remember when I was in high school, knowing that I wanted to do something in psychology, but having a very sort of narrow-minded idea of what that meant. And so I'm wondering if you can talk generally, or maybe even talk about some of those areas that people often don't think about, but actually relate to psychology.
Sure. I think, at least in talking to our first year students, that there are a lot of areas in psychology that students may not think about initially. Most of the time, our students in intro psych think that we're going to be focusing a whole lot on the helping professions and on dreams. And certainly we touch on those things, but those are just really small slices of the entire field. The field looks not only at how we can help people who have psychological struggles, but there's also basic science involved in the field. For example, psychologists may study how drugs affect the brain, in addition to helping people who have substance use disorders. One area that may not be on folks' radar much, but is something that we're seeing our students more and more interested in, is learning strategies to help kids who have autism. I teach a class in behavior modification, and I have seen several students in that class really have their interest sparked in how behavioral sciences can be used to improve the lives of folks who have autism. And in fact, we have had several students who have pursued, while they're at Ohio Wesleyan, paid experiences working one-on-one with families that have a child who's been diagnosed with autism. So that's one area that students sometimes are like, oh, I could do that. I could do that now. I could do that for a job and get paid and get trained. I also see that sometimes people don't really tap into the role of psychology in the workplace. That's something that is really an up and coming field. It's called organizational behavior, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as industrial organizational psychology. It deals with how psychological principles can be employed in the workplace to help improve productivity, well-being, and quality of life. And we've got our personality psychologist, Melanie Henderson, has a real specialty in organizational behavior. She's got a specific research interest focused on power dynamics and how those play out in the workplace. And there are many students who wind up sort of being drawn in that direction, especially those students who have an interest in business as well. That's something that may not be on people's radar.
Perfect. So some of our audience may know a bit about our signature program, the OWU Connection. Others may not know much about it at all, but essentially the OWU Connection allows students the opportunity to do a research project, a travel experience, and or an internship experience at some point during the course of their time at Ohio Wesleyan. And while right now, the OWU Connection is not a required element of graduation, we know that more than 90% of our graduates will have done at least one of those things prior to graduating. So we talked a little bit about internships, Dr. DiLillo, but I'm wondering if you can give some examples of students and what they've done in psychology with regard to the OWU Connection, related to research, or even if there's travel opportunities you can recall, or even other internship experiences.
Sure. I think one of the main ways that our students take advantage of the connection, other than through internships, is through research experience. So there are a couple of ways that students can pursue research in the psychology department. One would be for course credit during the year, where students who have a particular topic that they are interested in researching could pair up with a faculty member whose expertise is closest to their interest. And they can either help faculty member work on the faculty member's research. Usually that's a good way to get introduced to the research process as it's happening. And then more advanced students may wind up working one-on-one with a faculty member on a research project that the student themselves have developed. So that's one way that students can get involved in research at OWU. Another way is through our summer science research program, where students can apply to spend a good part of the summer working full-time with a faculty member on a research project. Students who are involved in the summer science research program have the opportunity to live on campus with other students who are working with other faculty members across campus. And they have the opportunity to participate in seminars and other career development opportunities as well. This is an absolutely fantastic experience for students, especially if they are hoping to go to grad school. Students have a really unique opportunity to get to know the research process from beginning to end. And it culminates with a symposium in the fall that's usually combined with a visit day for prospective students. So shout out, think about coming in the fall if you're interested in seeing what our students are doing. So research, absolutely a great way to take advantage of the connection. But you also mentioned travel opportunities. And I thought it might be interesting for you to hear a little bit about a couple of the theory into practice grants that some of our students have recently written and executed. So one student that I worked with a couple of years ago quite closely developed a project to go to Tanzania and interview elders in a particular community there about their perceptions of dementia. She was really interested in cross-cultural differences in how people experience family members with memory difficulty. And so I was not the person who went to Tanzania with her, but there was a faculty member in Black World Studies who has an expertise in that area of the world and a lot of connections. So the three of us worked together to help the student develop this project. And ultimately, she was able to go to Tanzania and conduct some really interesting qualitative interviews with some elders in the community where the other faculty member had connections. So that's one example of a theory into practice grant that was fairly recent. Another theory into practice grant that I helped a student with this year that unfortunately was not able to happen was a trip to Australia to look at how reductions in biodiversity related to the Australian wildfires affected people's mental health. And that was a partnership with somebody in zoology and myself and the student. So that would have been super cool.
Every time I hear about these kinds of projects, I'm just in awe of the interests that our students have and the projects they come up with. Just a couple of quick things about the Theory to Practice Grant Program for people who don't know. This is really an amazing opportunity that's part of the OWU Connection that allows students, faculty, and even staff members to apply for grant funding either by themselves or in combination with folks to do some kind of project or experience or research that's of interest to them. And essentially, if it's granted, then you get the funding and the experience is free. So those theory to practice grants can be as small as a couple $1,000s or as large as $10,000 or $12,000 in some cases. So it's a really great way to supplement, I think, what you are able to learn in the classroom and really connect it to the real world. There's about $250,000 available every year, as I understand it, for this Theory to Practice Grant Program, and a couple different rounds of review. So it is the case too that a student could propose or put together a grant, put it through review. Maybe it's not accepted the first time. They go back for revisions, get some insight from folks, and they can resubmit it and potentially get funded through the second or third round. So there's multiple opportunities, which is wonderful. I also wanted to touch just quickly on the visit program that Dr. DiLillo was talking about. We have a program in the fall. This year will be scheduled most likely for Monday, September 21st. And we call it Consider Science and the Arts. And we have kind of a science and an arts track. And the science track, which we lump psychology into, even though it's kind of a social science and natural science at times, participates, and our visiting students get to attend the symposium that Dr. DiLillo was talking about and learn about some of these very projects that students have done with faculty members. So you will certainly, if you can remain on our mailing list, we'll be sure to send you an invitation to that event on September 21st. So I want to talk a little bit, Dr. DiLillo, about outcomes and what students do after OWU. So if we can talk about, is grad school like the necessary or automatic next step? What kind of grad programs are typical? And we'll kind of go from there. So if you want to start with that.
Sure. We certainly do have lots of students who are interested in pursuing graduate school, either immediately after Ohio Wesleyan or a few years down the road. But that's absolutely not the default. Um, some of the programs that we have seen students most interested in the last couple of years are Masters in Social Work programs, Masters in Mental Health Counseling programs, and Masters in Public Health programs. Those, I would say, are the top 3 types of programs that our students have been pursuing immediately after Ohio Wesleyan. We also, though, have students who pursue other professional degrees. We have students every year who are going to med school or law school or divinity school. So frequently have students go out into the workplace for a few years and then decide to go back to grad school at some later point. It's interesting because for a report I had to pull together last semester, we did a Facebook survey from our psychology department alumni group, and we got 105 answers, 105 responses in just a couple of days. And of those 105 folks who had graduated, over the last 20 years or so, the majority of them had actually gone to grad school ultimately. I think all but 30 of them had gone to grad school. Most of them had attained master's degrees. Some had gotten doctoral degrees, and then there was a smattering of other professional degrees in that group as well.
And related to careers and maybe combined with graduate school, what are some of the career options that psychology majors go into, and do some of those careers require you to have an advanced degree in order to work in them?
So I think one of the most important things to keep in mind when you're thinking about a degree in psychology is that if you want to be a psychologist, so if you want to be the person who is helping somebody with some sort of psychological challenge, then you will need to go to graduate school for that. You do not necessarily need to get a doctoral degree, but in order to have the correct license to do that, you need to have at least a master's degree. And we have been very successful at helping folks navigate the path from undergrad to that type of degree, if that's something people are interested in doing. However, I also tell people that one of the things that is fantastic about our major, and frankly, fantastic about being at a liberal arts college, period, is the fact that you will come out of Ohio Wesleyan being able to think critically, being able to work with other people, being able to write well, being able to solve problems creatively, and those are skills that employers want. They are not necessarily interested that you can explain how a neurotransmitter works, but they care about those other skills. And as a psychology major, you will have those skills in spades. So in addition to being prepared to pursue graduate school, if that's what you want to do, you're prepared to do all kinds of other things. So I was thinking through some of our most recent graduates who didn't choose to pursue graduate school right after Ohio Wesleyan, and some of the things that they are doing now. There's one student who is a realtor. There is a student who is doing marketing research. There is a student who is a recruiter for healthcare professionals at a children's hospital. We have several students who are using applied behavioral analysis to work with kids on the autism spectrum. We have a student who is a project manager at a textbook company. So most of those careers right now don't have anything to do with the psychology content necessarily. but they really do make use of the skills our students leave with. And of course, as a psychology major, one of the things you would come away with is having a comprehensive understanding about how people work. And all of those careers can benefit from that skill.
That is so true. I think back to my own experience coming out of Ohio Wesleyan and sort of wondering what I was going to do with my degree and where did I want to land. And there were a couple things that I knew, one of which was that I wanted to help people, like many psychology majors have thought. But I also, through my experience at Ohio Wesleyan, and some internship and research experiences, came to the conclusion that I wanted to help people who wanted to be helped, which is an interesting distinction, and maybe selfish. I don't know, but ironically, finding myself in college admission gives me that perfect opportunity. That clearly students hopefully aren't in dire straits when choosing a college, but in many ways, I feel like I'm putting my counseling hat on when I'm working with prospective students and families. And so for me, I found my niche, even though as a high school senior, I would have never imagined that college admission was at all related to the field of psychology. So I often remind students that I meet with that this field, as you mentioned, Dr. DiLillo, is so broad. And really, even what you're exposed to in high school is this little narrow window of the full experience. So yeah, just my personal experience with that. We do have a question from the audience about forensic psychology, and I wonder if you could talk a bit about that and how students might tap into that at Ohio Wesleyan.
We see a lot of students coming in with interest in forensic psychology, and the course I think that most directly addresses that is a course in psychology and the law. It's a relatively new course for us here. It's taught by Chris Modica. He's the same person who does the internship class. But that's a class where you would learn about how psychological processes are relevant in the legal system. So you would learn about things like jury selection, about different biases that jurors might have, about how valid eyewitness testimony is or not. And that would be a course that I would strongly recommend for someone who has an interest in forensic psychology. One of the things that I hear oftentimes from prospective students is that they may have an interest in something related to criminal profiling. That unfortunately is not something that most liberal arts colleges have a focus in. In fact, most criminal profilers who are working in that field get into criminal profiling not through psychology, but through criminal science. So many of them start out as police officers first and get additional training that way. So whereas we don't focus on that area, we do have a really strong course in psychology and the law.
That's great. I have one final question myself, but I'll remind the audience that we do still have a few minutes for your questions if you have others. But I wonder, Dr. DiLillo, if you could talk about how you think Ohio Wesleyan psychology program might be different than those of other similar sized institutions or even completely different institutions. What sets our program apart in your mind?
Mm-hmm. I can tell you what our graduates tell us. And every year we conduct surveys of our alums, and most of us as faculty members stay in close touch with a number of our students who have graduated. So these are some sort of anecdotal comments that students have made. One of the things that the students tell us they appreciate the most is the number of opportunities they have to work very closely with accessible faculty members. And those opportunities really do abound. We are here because we like to teach. We are here because we love our students. We are here because we value those interactions. And for me personally, being online this semester really underscored that for me. My students have been my connection to really the outside world during that last semester. And we, I think, to a person, value that above all else, value that connection. And so when students leave here, they really have the benefit of faculty members who know them well, faculty members who can serve as mentors for them well past graduation, faculty members who we hope can provide wise counsel. Just in the last week, I've met with 2 alums over Zoom who are having sort of career crises and thought that I might have some guidance or some suggestions for them. And those are things that we see as real perks of the job, not as, oh gosh, it's another meeting for a student who's already graduated. Those one-on-one connections, I think, are huge. In sort of a less sort of personal factor, I think our major is really flexible. I mentioned that we have a relatively low number of courses needed to get the major. That means you can easily double major, like Lori did, and like so many of our students do. It also means that if you want to spend a semester studying abroad, you don't need to worry too much about whether or not you can get your psychology credits in. If you go to a program abroad that perhaps doesn't have many psychology courses available, that's typically no problem, because you can get those courses easily during your other 7 semesters. So the flexibility of the major, I think, is also another thing that is a real asset. And then finally, I would say the range of opportunities to engage with those connection experiences, whether it's research, whether it's internships, whether it's those one-on-one independent studies with faculty members. Those are things I think that set us apart and really serve to foster that unique relationship that faculty members have with their students.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. DiLillo, for joining us this evening and sharing your expertise and more importantly, your time. I know that the semester is over and grades are in, and you're probably looking forward to enjoying some rest and relaxation and non-Zoom time during the summer. So we very much appreciate your time with us tonight. I'll remind our audience of a couple of things. We, of course, are doing many virtual things to engage with our students. We have another week of scheduled virtual opportunities like this one. On Tuesday, we have what we call Teaching Tuesdays. And though our live classes have been finished for a couple of weeks, we have faculty who have offered to lead mock classes for prospective students. And so this coming Tuesday, which is the 26th of May, I think there are 3 or 4 different mock classes in different disciplines that you could choose from. Also next Thursday, we will have another one of these Bishop Plus sessions on the education department. And actually, some of you on tonight might be interested in that one. We do see a pretty common double major between psychology and education. There tends to be quite a bit of overlap in that area. I will also say that we are beginning to have conversations in our office about being able to reopen, hopefully soon, to visitors, a limited number in a very safe and healthy way. And so as soon as we are able to make that announcement to have students on campus, we do hope that you'll be able to schedule a visit with us, if not this summer, then for sure in the fall, to see things live and to have conversations with folks in person, of course, still socially distanced. We are putting together some other virtual opportunities for the month of June and July, but a special plug for a new thing that Ohio Wesleyan is offering this this summer. It's a COVID-19 class. We had about 25 faculty, I think, that came together and are offering 10 weeks of lectures, all related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but coming at that from a variety of different perspectives. And it's actually a credit-bearing class for our students, but we have, believe it or not, over 1,000 registrants. That does include our students, but also includes alumni and community members and parents and school counselors and whoever is interested in this topic. It's really neat because you can watch these classes live when they take place on Mondays and Wednesdays at 4. But if you can't make those times, they are also available on our YouTube channel on our website. And I typically have conflicts at 4 on Mondays and Wednesdays with my regular job. So I've been catching up the last couple of weeks while I'm on the treadmill, actually watching these. But a special plug is Dr. DiLillo is going to be co-leading one of these, I believe, in a couple of weeks, June 8th, I think, right? And we'll be doing one of these COVID-19 lectures. It's a really fascinating thing to listen to, and especially fun for me because I get to see these faculty all the time on campus, but very rarely do I get to take classes from them, if at all. And so it's been fun to see them from that perspective. So if you go to our website, it's just owu.edu/COVID class. You can find all kinds of information about that, and feel free to tune into any of those that you might be interested in. So Dr. DiLillo, any other last words of wisdom or advice or insight that you'd like to share before we log off tonight?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. I know for all of us, it's been a really strange last few months, but I'm really glad to have the opportunity to connect with you virtually. And those of you who are students, best of luck with your college search. I really hope to get to meet you in person.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for participating this evening, and have a great night as well as a wonderful holiday weekend. Thanks so much and take care.